Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to episode 34 of Coffee with Campus Consultancy. Terry, I just saw your mug. You've got to hold that up again. That is so good. I love it. All right, well, that's already thrown off my intro to the show. That's amazing. Welcome. Terry is a joker, a man with a huge heart, and also has done some amazing things. We're going to be talking all about that today. I'll introduce you to Terry in a second. Before we get there, though, thank you for joining. This is episode number 34 of Coffee with Campus Consultancy. We're going to be talking about values today, the importance of values on a personal level, how you can use them to guide your career, and how they seem to pop up everywhere as soon as you become conscious of them. So we'll do all of that and more after this quick little introduction. Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good to see you, Josh.
Good to see you too.
Honest with you, man. It's nice to talk to people without a mask on.
Yeah, I bet. And so for people who are tuning in, for us, it is Thursday morning in Australia, 8 a.m. But for you, I believe... wait, what time? Is it 5 p.m. for you?
It's 6 o'clock. It's a little late for coffee, Josh, but I think it started as coffee. But yeah, it's 6 o'clock in New York.
There you go, 6 o'clock in New York. Yeah, it's funny. We'll have my cousin Holly on yesterday, which is a beautiful family affair, from the West Coast, you from the East Coast today, and Andy earlier in the week, who we were talking about before, jumping on as well. So 3 guests from the US, which is awesome this week. And Terry, what's life been like for you in terms of where values come up for you? Were they always something front of mind? Was this something that, when you were younger, you were always thinking about? Were you the guy who was always talking about his values? Or is this something that came up for you a little bit later in life? Where did values come into the mix for you?
Yeah, no way, man. This was not a younger thought. First, I want to start with gratitude, man. You are so talented. You do such a great job. I've been watching your shows, and your audience is absolutely awesome. So thank you for all you do, Josh. It's really spectacular. Values, it came late in life, and it shows up when you see a lack of values. And when you're in environments that lack values, things break down fast, and it's problematic quick. And I've spent a lot of time in media and tours and rock tours and entertainment, and then later in cause. And when you find a group, when you find that those right characters, and you find that right culture, what you find that you have in common are these deep values that you live, values that you can communicate. And those true values really create that garage band, or those people you want to work with forever, that trust, that loyalty. So it had to be a long discovered path. And I was like, Josh, why do we have to wait so long to convert, bend, and discover and understand values? So I'm glad we're talking about it today.
Yeah, I love that idea that they show up where there's a lack of values. Is that somewhere where, and already people are jumping in. Christine, good morning. Joanne, good morning. Lovely to see you here. Is that something where, you mentioned, I don't want to assume it came from the rock band environment, but, I spent a couple of years traveling around the world and in bars and clubs and stuff. And there was some questionable values that I lived out at times as well. Was there anything particular, like, was there a moment when you were like, oh, okay, I'm in a situation where I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel right. How did that idea that, sometimes I don't want to say the wrong values, but the values that you may not aspire to were the ones you were around?
Yeah, or maybe just misaligned, and a lot of that came up. You just mentioned that you were, in bars and rock bands and everything. So just using that as an example, I noticed the kind of conversations that were particularly inspiring and juicy went back to my college days, where I really wanted to be a journalist, and I really wanted to be a war correspondent, and ended up going in the dark side in the entertainment world. But where I got really intrigued and really moved and really deeply engaged is when I was working with oftentimes A-list celebrities who were working deep in cause. And those conversations shifted. It wasn't about, stepping on stage and wowing an audience and performing. This was a life performance. And that was a big aha moment. It happened a couple of times. It happened, in being able to work with Alicia Keys, and certainly years ago with Phil Collins, when we had set him up with a sponsorship and a tour sponsorship. And he's like, oh, don't really need the money, but I'm trying to feed the homeless. And it was like, wow, it was really cool. And to be able to connect with people on deeper values and a deeper sense of purpose, so passion and purpose and all of those. And so it became important to say, well, I mean, you can look at some values, and there's some, you can throw them out there, like, why do values get a bad rap or a bad name? So some great values are like communication, respect, integrity, excellence. We've all heard of those. But communication, respect, integrity, and excellence was Enron's values. So we know the Enron story. They didn't live by their values. So the values get a bad rap, not because they're bad values, but people don't adhere to them. They don't live by them. They don't put them deep inside their culture. So the absence of values is really people not adhering, not adapting, not living them, not communicating them. So on a personal level, it's a great place to start, Josh. And you briefly flashed that, you talk about your core values. So I'd love to ask you, what are the core values for you, Josh? That's really important that you feel you live.
Yeah, most definitely. And as we do, this is definitely resonating. Kashif's jumping on. Heather, good morning to you as well. Andrew's saying g'day. G'day, Andrew. How you doing? So welcome. And a nice g'day there. So you just you're on an Australian live stream, Terry. So there's one for you. Yeah, so for me, definitely. And I would say one of my favorite things about starting Canvas Consultancy was this idea of crafting these values. And so I'll actually bring them up and show you. So they sit on the bottom of our website. The vision, mission, values page is, what I think is the be all and end all of actually what we kind of do at campus. It's a massive, massive thing. So the 8 that I have up there on the screen, leadership is service, which is the topic of my TED Talk, which is really interesting. I absolutely love that. Add value first, challenge everything, continual growth, etc. They're all there. So our big sort of, when it comes to theory of change, when we're looking at what do we actually do, what are our inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes, empower leaders to create change is the value that I think is a really big one for me. Everything I do is saying, well, you could try to help everybody, or you could help people who are powerless, and there's no one's powerless, but who are perceived or don't feel like they have their own power. But where I've chosen to direct my time and energy is in people who are actually in leadership roles, who actually have some level of decision-making authority and can create change. But then with that, I'm obsessed with how do you help them realize their values, themselves, their purpose and mission in life, something greater than themselves, and then use all that opportunity to do good in the world. So for me, the empower leaders to create change is a big one with my work. On a personal level, continual growth and challenge everything. I'm frustrating sometimes of like, I just want to push back against everything. And sometimes in workplaces, when I realized I was butting heads with people, that's a value that some people don't believe in. Some people go, well, who are you to challenge my point of view on religion or on the environment or on parenting? And I think like as soon as you can't challenge something, then it falls into dogma or ideology. And so the risk there is, as I was maturing, was how do you do this in a respectful way? How do you create dialogue, not monologue when you challenge? How do you bring someone in, not make them wrong, but still have a really interesting idea-focused conversation, not a you do this, I do this, you're wrong, I'm right. So those things, those 8, when I put those together are aspirational for me, but I fall short of all of them every day. So that's a really important learning for me on values too.
Well, I'm guessing you didn't cram for this study and you didn't just come up with your values because of today's topic with the value of values.
No.
They were printed. They're there for everybody. And that's a really key piece. And I think we can cover 3 different things here today, Josh. And one of them, which you already launched, is talking about personal values and posting them, living by them, making sure that we look at them and confront them every day and say, wow, am I aspiring? Am I living up to my values? Yes, we often we fail our values, but we can work towards our values. And by communicating those values with others and to ourselves first and foremost, that keeps us sharp. It holds ourselves accountable, and it invites others to hold ourselves accountable as well. So I think that those personal values are really cool. And I think we talk a little bit more about personal values and then talk about being conversant in values when it comes to career, how to connect on a career path, how to either use them in your interview or climb the ladder, or in the gig economy, how can you use them in process, which is the third piece. It's the process of creating and establishing values, not just for yourself, but with others, and engaging all of those guys in that process is really cool. It's a fun opportunity. It's a great way to get deeper learning about each other. And I look at values as your operating system. It's really your OS. It's your why. And it's your how. And with any big enough why, any how is possible. But to have your why and how covered in your values is it's super cool. I noticed, when I first joined Enactus, a great organization, and I hit all the Enactus students out there. And if you haven't heard of Enactus and you're a student, join it. If you haven't heard of Enactus, you're not a student, join it. But what's cool about when I first got to know Enactus is there was a marketing group that helped establish a sense of value statements, but there was not a deeply engaged process to establish those values. So one of the things I did at Enactus is we did a big, wide survey, as deep as we can go to all of the stakeholders, the students, the alumni, the board, staff, and we really started this value process to establish what are those core values. And we came up with a list of 5 and like the 15 commandments. We took the 5th off, just not because it wasn't valuable, but it was memorable to kind of link in with 4 of them, what we established, which are epic. There's it starts with integrity, the essence of everything. It's the core of everything. Passion, in innovation, and collaboration. And those are the kind of 4 that we talk about a lot. They're on big banners when you come to our event, but we communicate them, we stand by them, we live by them, and we ask people to communicate. But when it comes to personal values, Josh, not a lot of people stop and go, hey, what exactly are they? I think we know what we are. We think we have.
What are they, Terry?
Yeah,
tell the people.
So so what I would encourage, so let's just try this with your awesome audience really quick, is take a moment. I'll share some of my personal values, but that doesn't make them your values. They're just mine, personal. But I'd ask everybody to just take a 30 seconds and just close your eyes. And think about, why do I wake up in the morning? Why do I do what I do? What is it, in the greatest possible context, what is it that I value most? Not only in my mind, in the theater of my mind, but out deep in my heart and in my actions. What is that thing that I value most? I'm going to encourage your thread here. Just pop in some words of what they think that they value most, and what they do value most. And it's a great place to start, is like, what's your why? What is it? And what's that overall great arching opportunity? And while I when I think about my overall why, family, friends, life, my belief, all of those things are folded into it. But one of the things I value very, very highly is the happiness of pursuit. And we can talk about the pursuit of happiness, but the happiness of pursuit.
I love that.
You're not just on the way to get happy. You're deciding to be happy on your way to the pursuit. And it changes the road trip entirely, because some people just really hate the journey, man. They hate checking in at the airport, they hate getting in the car, they hate packing the car. And they could choose to hate. They could also choose to go, hey, it starts now. So yeah, this is wonky. It's not part of everyday life, but man, I'm on the journey. So it's a decision that you make. So I really enjoy the happiness of pursuit. I think it's really powerful. I look at my own values as epic. So I always lead with empathy. I always lead with being interested. Empathy is a great quality, and it's something I always work towards. And start by just purely being interested in a very, very genuine way of understanding where people are at, meeting them where they're at. And so the E for epic is empathy and energy. I always try to bring energy, and I always try to read other people's energy, but I'm like, let's raise the energy of the room here, not in a disingenuine way, but in an authentic way that you can aspire into and you can build on. So the E, my epic values is empathy and energy. The P is passion, into the passion, not only pursuit, but passion into purpose. Passion into greater purpose is the P. And the I is integrity and innovation. An officer. So yeah, it's not just a title. It's something you got to nurture, those ideas. And then the C in epic is creativity and collaboration. And creativity, not in a way of like, oh, I'm so creative and thinking creative. No, creative and creation, that you actually have to create something out of that creativity. So yeah, those are the epic values. But I'm just curious to see. So I see Amy, empathy and integrity. Awesome.
Got that for you. Kashif said trustworthiness, trustfulness. Oh, I like this. Truthfulness, trustworthiness, and fairness.
Nice.
Truthfulness and trustworthiness. I like that. That's a nice combination. He also had justice in there as well. And Heather's jumping in saying her son's a family too.
Heather, that's so cool because just taking that in the comment before, one of my sons' name is Justice.
Oh, wow.
I have two sons, Justice and Elijah, and I think of them. Thank you for saying that, Heather. That's so solid and so cool. My two sons are my two pillars, and they remind me in life of a big why, and those are two pillars that guide me. And my son Elijah is funny. He's a content creator. He's in college. He's at CU Boulder. He's a good kid, charismatic, awesome. And my son Justice, a little bit older than him, a year and a half, just had his birthday last week.
Cool. Happy birthday, Justice.
Yeah, happy birthday, Justice, buddy. He's in the next group. And anyway, thing about Justice is he's amazing. He's my lesson in being very, very present. So Justice is autistic, apraxic, ataxic. For him to get a mug like this to his lips, it's a celebration. So he has about 50 words approximation to his repertoire, extreme and the low end of the spectrum of autism, but many, many, many beautiful gifts. So those are my two pillars in life. And so when I look at your comment, Heather, about your two sons, those two pillars remind me that between Justice and Elijah Genesis is that if one of us can look out for two of us, then there is enough of us for all of us.
Say that one more time. I think that's so important. That's beautiful.
If one of us can look out for two of us,
mm-hmm.
then there's enough of us for all of us. And that's true of the entire planet Earth. On average, if one of us just looks out for two of us, then there's enough of us for all of us on average. And not everybody can look out for two others, but on average, we certainly can. There's many people that look out for hundreds of people. So it's a small law of averages that is cool. Josh,
wow, I love that.
Yes.
Okay.
So epic values, your core values, you had mentioned both you can aspire into your values and you can live your values and you can fail your values. There's a lot of lessons in failure and there's places where we shouldn't fail. We shouldn't fail vulnerable populations. We should learn from other people's failures, not just create our own, but there's a lot of lessons there. But the other two thing about values and career connections, I think is worth covering here, Josh, because you framed this conversation in and around career.
Yeah,
is starting with interested versus interesting. And I really loved your conversation with Andy earlier this week. It was my Monday night. It was very, very cool. I think he was calling in from Chicago. And you called him Mr. LinkedIn. And I really loved the conversation you guys were having about careers and what you should put on your LinkedIn profile. And one of the key aspects I always find is that there is a piece of data out there that said those that take greater interest, those that ask a lot of questions on interviews versus just being asked all the questions, those are the ones that actually ask and engage and also ask questions are the most likely ones to get hired. There's data out there that supports it.
Yes.
You have the opportunity to lead by being interested. So,
yes. Terry, I got to jump in. I love that. And the C in my leadership as service TED talk was curiosity. So I was interested when you said creativity and creation. I love that too. Mine was curiosity. And with that, I always say, with students when they're in interviews, that question at the end of an interview where they say, do you have any questions for us?
Right.
And a striking amount of people, having been interviewed hundreds of people in a previous role, wouldn't actually have any questions. They're like, oh, no, not really. They hadn't prepared. And I always say, imagine you went on a first date and you're sitting in a restaurant, having a nice glass of wine, some sparkling mineral water. You sit down, you ask that person a whole bunch of questions about themselves. And then you sit back and you say, is there anything you'd like to know about me? If we're going to have a future together, is there anything you want to know? And they go, nah, nothing. That's it. I've talked about, you're going into a job where you might be there for hopefully years. And if you're using that job as a stepping stone, would you go on a first date with someone? And if they said, oh, I'm just here for 2 years to get your name on my resume and then I'm going to go find someone better, maybe that's why we've got a problem.
Right.
But if you're going to a job that you're going to be there for years and you have no questions, you don't know what they do at their Christmas party. You don't know what the culture's like. You don't know what how do you have no? So, and people do have questions, but I think that idea of saying I have to prove myself to the world, and it's no, be more interested rather than being interesting. Be interested in someone else.
100%. And why wait to the end of the interview or why wait to the end of the date? Start with an interested question.
Yes.
definitely do that in an interview. And way to do that with values is to say, hey, it was on your website and I saw your mission, vision, very aligned. I saw your values. I said, those are really powerful. I really admire and aspire to those values. You might find the person on the other end of the interview is like, oh crap, I'm not really sure I know the values. But it's perfectly cool to be conversant on how you connect with that company's values. Even if you're to say, hey, I was searching through your website and I didn't see your values, but I know you have them, it's really totally okay to explore. Like if you lead a conversation asking about somebody's values, wow. I mean, if they come back with a negative response, that company's probably not for you anyway, man.
Yeah, big time. I think that's such a good insight too. And whether it's personal relationships, friends, colleagues, clients, customers, partners, careers.
Yeah.
If you start talking about values and people go, oh, we don't talk values here, like turn around and run. Like, because there are beautiful companies out there who, if you have done the work, because it's hard.
Yeah.
To tap into your values, craft them, and then live by them. If you're that sort of person, you won't, I think there's a fair thing to say, if you're in an environment where other people don't live their values, even if their values are different, but if they don't live them, if they don't talk about them, like I don't think that's where you'll thrive, rather than being around people who might even have different values than you, but are really living them. And that's where the level of conversation is at ideas, not at people or at gossip. So yeah, really interesting. Okay, beautiful. Terry, if people are starting to go, all right, well, this values thing sounds really interesting. I shut my eyes. I thought of a couple of things. In terms of living your values throughout your career, I'd love to know from your experience, is this an easy journey? Is it like, oh, I've got my values, now I know what I need to do when I wake up? Or is have there been a moment or a couple of moments of tension where maybe you've had to make a decision and gone, oh, the easy way is this, but my values say this. The money says this, but the value says this. Don't
rob yourself. Don't rob yourself of the process. The process of establishing breathing your values is really cool, and it does help guide. It's a guiding principle for you. As I say, your values are your operating system. And by the way, Josh, you might find some articles or talks that say hey, it's not about values, it's about culture, but values are the core seeds to developing and creating culture. So they're coexistent. They co-create each other, and that's really important. That culture. Some people say culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think it does all day long, and lunch and dinner and everything else. And culture is what will collapse a company or a good band or a good anything in the gig economy. There are times where you need to check yourself and go, hey, this is my own operating manual. I've declared it out loud. I want to live by my values. And this really feels like it's out of integrity. Would give you an opportunity to communicate exactly that. And just to say, hey, you don't have to take that burden on yourself. You can take it to others and go, this feels like really out of integrity. Or, hey, that comment that I made, that didn't really feel like, it felt like it was out of integrity. And so values tend to have, a very serious aspect, is a very serious guiding principle. But I'm going to throw out a New York style pizza to anybody right now on your audience here. And here's what I'd love to do is I'd love to check your audience, us included, on a couple of value words. Now, to come up with a value statement, sometimes it's 1 to 3 sentences, 4 to 5 words, or 3 to 5 words. It's best when you can remember what they are. Mine just happen to stand, for epic. But I've helped other companies and organizations for their values in sort of a kind of a nice little catchphrase that allowed everybody that was onboarding to go, yeah, our values are epic, and it stands for, so decode it and figure it out. But I'm going to, pizza giveaway here. So you got my word. So I'm going to give away a New York style pizza to one of our audience members. I'm going to ask everybody out there to go ahead and pop in 1 or 2 words of a value word that's valuable to you. And I'll make sure you get a New York style pizza or any style pizza, but I happen to be in New York, so what the heck.
So you want people in the comments below, in the thread, if they're watching right now, you want them to type in what?
Some value words that you find are personally of value to you, words that you would find of value to you, words that you would find of value to a company that you would be part of or would want to work for, or is there a company or organization or a small business that you aspire to work for and you believe that this is probably one of their values? So again, linking values to culture. Think about what those words are. You can't, there's no wrong answers. You can't, somebody's going to get a pizza. I got a word in my head and I want to see if it comes up. So I want to just, while we do that and go ahead and put in value words that are important to you. Some already came out, trust, integrity, and those are all powerful and important, but pop in, you can't go wrong. Pop in some crazy words that are outside the box if you want. But I want to talk about the process while we do that, Josh, the process of establishing values. So I work with a lot of young startup, a lot of young entrepreneurs on how to come up with a value process. And so, you know, some of them have already started value words and they're like struggling with them. And I'm like, okay, if your value word is awesome and crazy, and somebody tries to impose that upon you and you're not feeling it, then what's the value? So let's create a process. And one of the things that you can do first in the value process, if you're with a couple, like a startup, like with 5 other people, 7 other people, or many, is a quiet exercise where you all write down a key value to you, because you only have that opportunity to do it once. Because once the conversation starts, then, and it's okay, but other people tend to influence what that value should be. Is like trying to get the answer right on the pizza contest. Growth, honesty, nice, Christine. Yeah. Honesty, integrity, empathy, service of others. See, now you're popping in a whole enthusiasm. Okay, I'll just say enthusiasm is closer to what I'm thinking about. Value and verve are cool, so just a little hint there. But this process that we're engaging in now, we get to learn from each other. I get to learn down and see Isha's values, compassion. I get to see Joanne's values of impact and inspiring, and that's meaningful in our conversation. I mean, that hooks us together is to see what she values most. And so in that process, while you're doing this with others, go ahead and do a silent exercise where you write down these words, keep it personal, and then put that in a pile in the middle until you've revealed everybody else's values. And then continue that process, Josh, to build on it and to say, hey, out of this, other than your own value, which value would you now choose of the others? And so in that process, you get to get sold on other people's values. You get to appreciate, you get to establish a little bit more empathy and understanding in the value process. And it's really fun. And again, it's sort of the happiness of pursuit. You, on the road trip to values, you get to hang out with others. I always challenge organizations I work with or companies I work with when establishing their values is like, well, why don't you leave the 4th value open or the 5th value that would state you value what your customers value, or you value what your guests value. Like, what is it about valuing other people's value? Like, keeps that open so you don't have a closed determination, passion, curiosity. Thank you, Christine. I love curiosity, man. Josh, it's such a solid one. I almost happen to open C there. Yeah. But getting close. So you see a lot of like that's some beautiful aspiring value words, but also who do you want to hang out with? You know, who do you want in your garage band? Who do you want in your startup? Like, what company do you want to work with? If you look at the top companies that people want to work with, like Google, Facebook, Apple. So why is that? Why? Because they're steeped in integrity? I think not. I mean, not that they're not, but there's something else about that culture that they got going on. And as I said earlier, Josh, communication, respect, integrity, and excellence all sound like really nice values. They were Enron's values. So what is it about that culture that we want to create that's exciting? So I haven't seen the word come up yet. How much time we got, Josh? We
got some time. We got 10 or 15. Let's what does it start with? Maybe people can have a guess too. So this is great because people are exploring their own. So now let's gamify it a bit and give them a letter that they can go after.
All right. So we had some words that were really close. I think passion and creativity touches on it. And I'll give you some clues as like, what on earth are we doing here? Okay. You know, what are we doing and how do we want to live? So this word may help exemplify that. Flexibility is very close by 1 letter. So that was good. Helpfulness is cool.
Flexibility is 1 letter off.
It borrows one of those letters in flexibility. So that's
cool. Gosh, there's lots of letters in flexibility, Terry.
Yeah, of course. I'm not gonna
I like it.
Get you down that path that fast, but
no, give some time.
But the key is that the values is this is not an old school idea of your dad's grandpa or your grandmother's values, although those are all beautiful. It's about living values and establishing your own and communicating them. One of the things that I would ask you, everybody to do, is write down 3 to 5 words that are really important to you. Put it on your mirror, put it on somewhere where you're going to wake up in the morning and look at those values, live and breathe them. You asked a question earlier, Josh, these can be dynamic, but get to a place in a few days where you go, yeah, those are that's kind of my operating system. That's cool. I could communicate those. I could live by those, and get comfortable with them and see if you can commit to them, and then start to communicate them. And people, you don't have to go up to people and go, hey, my values are, nah. You just start to communicate in and around your values. So when I think about empathy and energy, I don't have to tell people those are my values. I just want to live them. I want them to feel that that's definitely, that verve is part of my values. So flexibility was the F, is right. It's a good F word, and it's short. It's short.
So we're talking an F word here.
Yeah, man.
We're opening up a can of worms.
But it's all good. Yeah. So see, I'm sure we can keep up with it soon. I'm going to try.
It'd be too easy if this was from the US. If this is your answer?
Freedom?
No. It's not it there, Joanne, but I'm loving Joanne. Joanne's had a lovely, only because I'm loving the comments there, I think we've set an all-time record. Not only has Joanne jumped in and said g'day, which we appreciate, but I think it's just worth noting, jumping in a couple of times here, and this is sort of part of the fun of the process, is crafting them. So when Joanne started sharing sort of helpfulness, freedom, there are a couple of other shares in here: insightful, inclusive, impactful, inspiring. It's like those words kind of put together is like that's starting to form a nice basis of like a set of values to go, okay, well now I've got 5 or 6, like how do I whittle that down towards the ones that are really most important?
And see how the conversation ding 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 ding. Okay, Christine Ann, hold that one right there. So see how the conversation shifts.
She's got it too.
So Christine and Joanne, I think I'll hit you up both with a piece. of Joanne, by being very, very active in the thread. Thank you very much. And Christine for coming up with fun first. It's, I often say, look, at an Actus, we're in a space and place where we work with at-risk populations. We work with at-risk environments. We work with some pretty tough challenges in the world. And it's hard work, and it is work. It's serious work. And the communities and places that we can't fail, we can't afford to, because it's too precious. And so in the end of the day, when we're working that hard, if we're not creating some level of enjoyment, if we're not having some fun, then I say, Josh, what on earth are we doing here?
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. And Terry, I think you'll like this. I only articulated this through this LinkedIn live show. And we talked before about creativity, putting something out into the world. I'd learned by thinking. I clarify my thoughts, not by thinking, by speaking, sorry. I've got to get stuff out. I've got to physically create in the world by vocalizing things. And it helps me think. And one of the insights I had, I was speaking to a good buddy of mine who you would love, Julian O'Shea, and he runs an organization called Unbound. We both teach lecture social enterprise together at University of Melbourne. And we were talking about how do you get fun into education. Right. And he set a couple of Guinness World Records. He's skateboarded on the highest volcano, just a cool and eccentric dude. And the thing that came up for me in that conversation, I realized, I was like, oh, it's curiosity that helps me have the most fun. Like when I'm snowboarding, it's pure. I'm like, what's over here? What's down there? What if I jump over this tree? Like it's that very quick asking like questions, but not having the answer, and the fun being like kids when they play, it's their imagination. And I think the imagination bit imagination as an adult can sound a bit silly, but like curiosity, it's like, what could we create? How could we make this better than it's ever been before? How do we hit that KPI in a fun way? How do we,
So we're at an inflection point here. This is an amazing moment in history. And COVID is so many lessons with COVID. We don't need to be at war with COVID, and COVID's not at war with us. But when we co-create concepts of what is it asking us to do, what's the opportunity here, where's the quiet, where's the curiosity, we're at an inflection point where we can start to look at precisely what you said. When we think about education and sharpening up our skills at this moment in time, we talk about fun, and what's the core of fun? Curiosity, I would agree. Gamifying is absolutely. Interactivity, as we did on the thread. Joanne and Christine, owe you pizza. You got solid, because now my values got to live up with them. I got to figure out how to deliver your pizza if I got to do it myself. Done deal. But here's what's happening to us. Look, we're binge watching Netflix and Amazon and now Hulu, Peacock. All these guys are into live streaming. And what's that hook? I mean, a very powerful hook, Josh, is it's a cliffhanger. Oh my gosh, I gotta watch after the commercial. I gotta watch the next episode. I got to, because there is a cliffhanger that tapped deep inside of my psyche to go, oh, what's next? And so that gamification, that cliffhanger, that sense of adventure, curiosity, that at play can work everywhere, and it can work in education. So when I look at all of the content out there streaming and all of our opportunities, if we do not take that kind of entertaining value, the kind of curiosity, that kind of production value, the kind of content we consume and crunch every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and sometimes all night, if we don't apply that into education, we're going to be in trouble. And if you think about any of your teachers, yourself, your advisors, your professors, fighting for share of mind, well, what could happen if content could be passive, could be just fun to watch, or I could enter that content by becoming active, or I could learn from that content? Then how would it be to activate content in such a way that creates a movement, creates action, creates opportunity? And I think Global Citizen, there's a lot of organizations that are onto this and doing it. But wow, what an opportunity we're sitting with in May of 2020. I mean, what great vision we have forward. It's just a beautiful time in history, man.
I think it is. And I think there are these opportunities there. And the idea of, I always say with content, the easiest metric is it should either entertain or educate, and bonus points it can do too. Bad content is like, here's my certificate. It's like, great, like, cool, you got a certificate, your mum will like that post, that's awesome. But like, you're not really educating, you're not really entertaining anyone. But like, think about the shows you watch in your downtime on Netflix. You might watch documentaries or you might watch movies, but there'll be an element of one of those too. Where I think this can be really fun, particularly as people look at their careers and their values, is like things like all the values we've listed today. Integrity can be fun. Digging into people like, you know, Joe Rogan just sold his podcast for $100 million, where he sits down and for 3 hours asks people what makes them tick. You know, and you might agree or not agree with Rogan, but the thing I love about him is like he is 100% authentically him. Whether it's tattoos, if it's eating elk all day on the carnivore diet, like speaking to people from both sides of the political spectrum, like he's living his thing. And I think there's something about the unapologetic nature of defining your values, figuring things out in live time in front of an audience, but then also going, we can make these values fun and engaging. So if you're looking for a career pathway, are you going with an organization that's, 70-hour weeks, suit and tie, sit in an office, don't speak up if you're not spoken to? Like, fine, there might be a place for that stuff in the world, but if your values are fun and creativity and curiosity, like that environment might sort of asphyxiate you there. Find an organization that has the values that you aspire to.
And help create them, and that helps to create. Not to say that you're removing trust and integrity into those things.
Not at all.
Balance of life. I might be in a little bit of trouble here, but a mentor of mine and his son, and we're all really good friends. He produced in college, in grad school, he wrote and produced this little movie called Dodgeball. Dodgeball is, purely fun, purely entertaining, but there's a lot of lessons buried deep in Dodgeball. It's not to say that I got to go watch a documentary. It's all good and cool, but what would it be like if you took some of this old school content, like a movie like Dodgeball, and go, here are the crazy lessons of Dodgeball? And a college professor could actually require in a class to go watch Dodgeball. His name is Rawson. He's an amazing guy. By the way, his next movie, I'll just plug a little promotion. It's coming out on Netflix probably late this fall, because it was production was disrupted by COVID. But in it is Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, Ryan Reynolds, and a favorite of mine is Gal Gadot. She was Superwoman. It's going to be a super movie. It's called Red Notice. But the point there is there's a lot of educational opportunities in the content that we passively watch, Josh, that, wow, how could we activate that? And I don't want to be decent. I'm very sensitive to the effect of COVID. And so that empathy key piece is, as you know, I was talking to you earlier about a very personal experience with COVID-19. That does not leave me. And so one of the things that I think is really important is, one of the lessons out of COVID is that we do not establish amnesia. We cannot forget. We cannot forget its deep effects, but we can learn from its lessons and become greater, and we can rise farther than we ever thought in our wildest dreams were possible. What an opportunity we're living with today.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. I couldn't agree more to that. And I think maybe one of those things, just something really practical that I started doing my first job out of uni, that if people want just something to do today, one thing to help with the values, this is the thing that someone taught me when I was 22, and my friend messaged me about it this morning and asked for the list 8 years later. And one of the things I used to have, I had this foreman. I went to work on a construction site and had this foreman. He's like, have you been to Australia, Terry?
Okay, so one of my greatest sins is no, Josh.
Yeah. Okay, so you will. You will. And when you do, you go to Queensland, and then this will make more sense. This guy is like in his 50s, a Queenslander. I guess the equivalent would be, it's not Texas, it's different, but there's a bit of that, like that ruggedness, live off the land. Queensland is awesome, and it is awesome. It's beautiful. Great Barrier Reef, Gold Coast, mountains, it's great. Anyway, Queenslander, ex-professional cricketer, just like a tough dude. And he used to say, Josh, the first rule of construction is whatever it is. And so he just said it about 15 times. And I was like, okay, he's obviously trying to teach me something here in his way. And so I started writing them down. And so I had a note file in my phone. And what I'd ask everyone to do today is write down the first rule is ... and think of that of your life. And so for me, I'd write the first rule of construction is, it'd be like measure twice, cut once. Whatever you think it's going to cost, double it. I was an engineer. First rule of construction was don't trust engineers. It was amazing how helpful that advice was sometimes. Right. Then I've kept that throughout my whole life. So for 8 years, I've kept a note in my phone that says the first rule is ... And every time I watch a movie, every time I read a quote, every time I listen to a podcast, because you're like, where do I capture all this brilliance? I grab those quotes or ideas and I write them down in this list. So I have this big, long list of values and quotes and concepts. Nice. Of just principles that I believe are really valuable in my life. So what you mentioned before about if each person helps 2 people, there's enough for all of us, that sort of thing. In my mind, when I heard that, I'm like, I'm going back to that. I'm going to write it down, add it to my list. And so today, that'll be one thing that I add to this list of principles that I live my life by. And I know when I, have kids or grandkids or work with kids in the future, I'll give them this list and I'll be like, the way I got whatever I got, good or bad, was living by this list. Right. And if my life is an example of what not to do, then maybe there's some problems with the list, or maybe I didn't live up to them. But just starting a list today, so you can go and watch dodgeball and you can enjoy it, but go, that's a really good point. I'm going to scribble that down, and then you're pulling the lessons out.
Yeah, there's crazy lessons all over the world, and I think curiosity will help uncover them, and I think we can find them in really fun and exciting places. And I obviously, there's a lot of talk about failure, fail to succeed, and failure. And I was like, it's all good, and we learn from our failures, and experience is important. I believe theory balanced with experience is even more important, because there's a lot of companies out there that have a lot of experience that have failed, but there's some that come along with the right theory. So Kodak and Polaroid aren't in the world really much anymore in the world of imaging, but here comes Instagram with a different theory. Who had more experience? Kodak and Polaroid. But theory outbalances experience. And so I think the lessons of failure is not just our own experience of failure, but if we could just manage to go ahead and learn from other people's failures, that's cool. Because Josh, I say this often, yes, to enact to students who are working in, compromised environments and compromised places, and the value of doing a thorough needs assessment is don't fail them. Don't fail them, man. Don't fail them out them signing up for that potential failure. There are places there's children that have been failed. There's communities that have been failed. There's formerly incarcerated people that have failed and they've been experiencing failure. Don't go experiment there. Don't go fail there. And so learn from other people's failure. And then when you're there working, make sure that they're engaged and aligned. And so one of the key lessons of failure is like, a lot of people just like free to fail. Here's have some more failure. Wait, man, slow down. There's nothing wrong with success either. So there's a balance of failure here. And if you can learn from others on that list that you're starting and adding to that's super cool, Josh. It's a great, man. That's why your audience is so absolutely amazing.
Oh, thanks, Terry. And the audience is amazing. So I think today we've definitely set a record for comments, which is a good learning that pizza giveaways as much as topics that go right to the deep depth of things.
Give stuff away. You're early in my career. I'll just leave you with this, Josh. Is I'd studied when I was in college. I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to volunteer in the Peace Corps, and I wanted to do all this stuff. And I didn't. I couldn't even volunteer because I didn't have a really strong second language skill. So I ended up working in the entertainment space. And when I was very young, in my 20s, I produced a game show. It was the very first game show of esports. I don't think there's any more OG than this OG when it comes to esports. And it was always fun. It was like, yeah, if you need to engage the audience, just give something away, you know? But the thing about giving is also understanding the value of receiving, the ebb and flow. And there's many times I've worked with organizations in the world where we've gone to sub-Saharan Africa, or I was deep in the Congo working with child soldiers, or I was working in refugee camps or working in Darfur, where there was the intention of giving. And in the intention of giving, just look at countries. The U.S. has dumped billions of dollars in other countries in sub-Saharan Africa, that spirit of giving. But if there wasn't a sense of receiving, it wasn't a sense of empowerment, then when you thought you were giving a gift, it ain't a gift. If they're not receiving it as a gift, and you're not empowering them, it's not really a gift. And so it's really important when we think about the world of giving that we also are open to receiving. That was like the toughest lesson for me. Once a mentor of mine introduced me on stage, and he said, listen, I heard me talk about Terry Torok before, guys, and here he is, Terry Torok. This was from a mentor of mine, Marshall Thurber, who I love and adore. And he goes, Terry Torok is great at giving. He sucks at receiving. And I just stood there on stage while people were like kind of half applauding. And I'm like, okay, another great lesson, man. Thank you. And so I just received that. And I talked about that, and I'd mentioned I got to know Deepak Chopra really well in the Sultanate of Oman, and he talks about ebb and flow of giving and receiving, and that it's so important that energy be exchanged, so that if you choose to give a classroom art materials, or a gift of materials and art, have them create some artwork and then bring it back to the school that provided that. So there's a beautiful exchange of humanity and humankind, and that ebb and flow that makes the world work, because plants eat sunlight and give out oxygen. That's a pretty cool exchange.
It is a cool exchange. Terry, you've been amazing. You're a wealth of wisdom, and it's been fun to tap into it and dip into that today. Thank you for bringing a lot of curiosity and fun and innovation to this episode.
2 pizzas, man. 2 pizzas. What episode is this?
Episode number 34.
Yes, 34, man. Way to go, Josh. What a great accomplishment, man. Thank you. So you do such a great job, and it's an honor and a pleasure and a privilege to be chatting with you, man.
Thanks, Terry. And likewise, I appreciate your time, and I'll receive that and take it in. And also, very much to you. I love everything that you do and the energy you bring. So thank you, my friend. With that, we're going to wrap up for today. If anyone's interested in following Terry's amazing work, check him out on LinkedIn. I love the sort of content that he shares and engages with. Really, really provocative and thought-inducing kind of content and questions. I love it. I love engaging with it. Kashif saying that he enjoyed a very deep talk. Joanne's super stoked. Great insights and pizza. Heather's jumping in saying woohoo. So woohoo to you as well, Heather. And thanks. We've noticed all of your comments over the last few episodes. Have an amazing day. If it's a Wednesday evening, if you're in the States, amazing. Have a great evening. If it's a Thursday morning in Australia, have a great Thursday. Thank you, Josh. I need to get thank you, Terry, written on my mug here. And we'll see you all again tomorrow at 8 a.m. for the 35th episode of Coffee with Campus Consultancy. See you later, friends. Bye.